So I grew up in Queens, New York City, and my childhood was basically spent making horror movies with my friends, stealing. At the time, you know, my dad had a big VHS camcorder made by Minolta, and I would steal, you know, I would borrow his camera and make these like horror films with my friends. And so that was sort of my childhood. You know, I started meeting all these interesting people in New York, and you know, there's a wealth of talent. So you could find actors, you could find, you know, DPs, whoever you want. And so I kind of assembled this crew and made my first movie, made a lot of mistakes. You know, I was, you know, living on a pretty meager salary, so I was kind of spending, I was living check to check and putting all my money into like making this movie. And it was my film school, and I think I learned a lot, and that eventually led to music videos. And that's where you know, I wanted to get that same feeling of like kind of like storytelling and gratification from like, you know, finishing a project, but I obviously couldn't make a feature over and over again. So I started doing music videos for my friends who had like indie bands and things like that in the city. And it's kind of like when like electro pop music was kind of getting popular, like in Brooklyn and stuff like that. So one of the first people I worked with was Jay-Z, which was kind of a crazy experience and a crazy thing to think about at the time, because, you know, I just made this thing that was really unique at the time. It was just like like guerrilla filmmaking, just running around the city with my Panasonic camera and one light, and you know, and like just really low budget. That led to videos with Nas, with The Roots, Snoop Dogg, you know, every major recording artist at that time I was able to do a video for, because, you know, the labels weren't pumping out these big expensive budgets, so I was the guy to go to make something cool happen with like, and just take like a part of their marketing budget, and the rest of it, you know, could be to promoting their album or whatnot. So that's kind of how my career started. I would consider my big break is I guess the Jay-Z Blue Magic video, but there was another video that came out which was a commercial, which was a Sprite commercial, and that basically featured me as like this Hollywood director, you know, like on the, you know, on the movie lot, like sort of being frustrated with this idea and these storyboards. And then I drink some Sprite, and then suddenly like I have all these crazy ideas, and they're materializing above my head, above the lot, and then they all splash down. And then like I have this idea, and it was, you know, like, you know, it was a big deal, I think, at the time for, you know, for me to be chosen to do that, because I was only known for like these like street videos. So there was something that I think Sprite was trying to tap into in terms of having authentic, you know, ties to hip hop culture that they wanted to feature. It felt like it legitimized a lot of the sacrifices I had made in my career. Spending so much time doing that and missing a lot of, you know, personal time or time with family. So that's sort of the things that I'm coming back to now that I've moved to Michigan. After like doing music videos for a while, and this is, you know, this 2000, from like 2007 to 2013 or so, I realized I got kind of like disillusioned with like the music industry. I felt like they didn't really respect directors as like artists. So we were, you know, often asked to work like really long hours and really sacrifice a lot of, you know, our own fees just to kind of make this vision come true. And so I was curious about getting into another industry, or how can I apply whatever disruptor techniques I discovered making music videos into another industry. So I thought about technology. I was always into technology. I went to Complex Media. So I was their creative director of video in their marketing department. And so that was pretty cool. I got a lot of cool projects done. I did videos with like Migos and like a bunch of different artists. Like I did a video with Manny Pacquiao, like a lot of celebrities and stuff. And it was a way to like kind of still work in entertainment, but in a more kind of structured format. So I did that for a little bit, which was fun. But, you know, I was also commuting from New Jersey into like Times Square every single day. That became just, you know, my quality of life was like kind of diminishing because I was spending so much time commuting, and cost of living was getting more expensive in New York. And it wasn't the same New York that, you know, I mean, everyone says that, but it certainly changed in you know, in those like 6 or 7 years where it became more about like real estate and finance. And so a lot of the artists kind of like moved away. My wife Nancy is originally from Detroit. And so when we started to think about moving somewhere else, we thought about Ann Arbor. And I just think Michigan is really cool. I think there's a lot of artists in Detroit and Ann Arbor that are just as special and just as interesting as my peers in New York City. And so it's been a real blessing to contribute to this community. I think that you're going to see some really amazing filmmakers come out of this region, you know, consistently. So I always felt like my biggest strength starting off was editing. And editing is a really unique, it's a unique skill. It really, you know, you have to have a certain level of empathy. You know, it's really like directing. You know, it's almost just like the experience. Just you're able to hone in and laser focus on what you have to do to tell the story. So I love that idea of manipulating the story and finding ways to remove the errors or do the, you know, hide the things and like, you know, create these illusions. So I always felt like I learned that first. Like that was something that I think even in college that I was training myself. And then I think the directing came after that, and learning to articulate and communicate and like find ways to you know, adapt to different personalities in a very short amount of time. The DPing, being around a lot of really amazing DPs in New York, I learned so much. I certainly won't ever consider myself a DP. You know, I can shoot, I can make things look cool. To have gear that I own, that I'm happy to bring in and utilize, you know. But it's more than that, right? It's the storytelling, right? And the story is really, we're at service to the story. If I can use all my tools to tell the duo story, then that's a win. As long as I feel like, you know, I'm being true to the subject matter, I'm being honest about it, then that's gonna come through.